68-year-old Jack Wilson slowly entered the bank, leaning slightly on his cane. Three masked men suddenly burst through the doors, guns pointed at the ceiling. "Everybody down! This is a robbery." First Chicago National Bank in suburban Elmhurst was bustling that Tuesday morning. Customers lined up patiently. Mothers with children, business people checking watches, elderly couples making their weekly visits. The marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights, and tellers chatted with regulars as they processed transactions. Jack Wilson had come for his monthly ritual, depositing his retirement check in person, refusing to trust online banking. Gray-haired with careful posture, he wore a neatly pressed flannel shirt tucked into khaki pants. Nothing about his appearance suggested anything remarkable, just another senior citizen running errands. Yet something in his watchful eyes, the way he positioned himself near the entrance with clear sight lines to all exits, hinted at a different background. His hands, though weathered with age, remained steady and strong. The slight limp in his walk came from an old injury, not age, though few would notice the difference. The peaceful morning shattered as the armed men stormed in, while other customers dropped to the floor, panic evident on their faces. Jack remained standing for just a moment longer, his expression hardened, eyes quickly assessing the situation, counting weapons, analyzing positions, evaluating threats. When he finally knelt, it wasn't from fear, but from careful calculation. His military-trained mind had already clicked into gear. "Phones. All of them. Now!" shouted the tallest robber, waving his gun frantically. The three men wore black ski masks and tactical-style clothes, attempting to look professional but betraying nervousness through fidgeting hands and darting eyes. One robber guarded the door, another collected valuables, while the third, whom the others called Daryl, seemed most agitated, pacing between hostages with unpredictable movements. Customers fumbled with phones, wallets, and jewelry, hands shaking as they placed belongings into a canvas bag. A young mother clutched her child, a businessman struggled to control his breathing, and an elderly woman began to pray audibly. Jack slowly reached for his outdated flip phone but paused, noting how Daryl's finger rested too close to his trigger, a dangerous sign of poor training and high anxiety. The security guard lay unconscious near the entrance, having been struck with a pistol, but during the initial moments. "You, old man, what are you staring at?" Daryl noticed Jack's analytical gaze and stalked over, gun pointed directly at his chest. "Hand over your phone. Now!" Jack raised his hand slowly. "Take it easy, son. I'm just reaching for my phone." His voice remained calm, steady, the voice of someone who'd faced far worse than armed amateurs. Daryl snorted. "Don't son me, Grandpa. You think I won't shoot an old-timer?" Jack carefully extracted his phone, maintaining eye contact. "I know you might. That's why I'm being careful." Something in Jack's composed manner further agitated Daryl. "You think you're smart? Get on the ground like everyone else." Inside Jack's mind, tactical assessment continued uninterrupted. Three robbers, clearly inexperienced, likely their first major robbery based on their nervous energy and poor coordination. The leader at the door showed more composure, but kept checking his watch, concerned about response time. These weren't hardened criminals. They were desperate and afraid, which made them unpredictable and dangerous. Jack had seen this pattern before, decades ago in military police operations. Fear-driven perpetrators often made fatal mistakes, putting everyone at risk. While scanning the room, Jack noticed a young female teller discreetly pressing what had to be a silent alarm button beneath her counter. When the gunman collecting valuables spotted her movement and turned toward her with rage in his eyes, Jack deliberately knocked over his cane, creating a distracting clatter. Sorry, he mumbled, drawing the gunman's attention away from the teller. "Old hands aren't what they used to be." The robber collecting valuables laughed and moved on, the teller's action forgotten. She caught Jack's eye briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Jack nodded almost imperceptibly before returning to his submissive posture. Several hostages had noticed the subtle interaction, how the old man had protected the teller without drawing attention to her actions. The businessman to Jack's right furrowed his brow, seeing something unexpected in the seemingly frail senior citizen. Daryl, increasingly erratic, began shouting about the time and pointing his weapon at various hostages, working himself into a dangerous frenzy. When a pregnant woman began sobbing uncontrollably, Daryl stormed toward her, weapon raised. "Shut up. Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about." Jack slowly rose to his feet. "She's pregnant. Stress isn't good for the baby. Why don't you let her sit in one of those chairs?" The bank went silent. Daryl whirled around, face contorted behind his mask, and marched back to Jack, pressing the gun barrel against the old man's chest. "Look at you, playing hero." He shoved Jack backward, causing him to stumble slightly. "What are you? Some kind of retired cop? Military?" His voice dripped with mockery. "Let me guess, an old veteran who thinks he still matters?" Jack said nothing, maintaining steady eye contact. "Get on your knees, old man," Daryl commanded, shoving the gun under Jack's chin. "Or I'll put a bullet in you right now." He laughed, turning to his accomplices. "Can you believe this guy? Grandpa here thinks he's John Wayne." The tension in the bank reached breaking point. Customers held their breath, certain they were about to witness a murder. Jack didn't move immediately. Instead, his eyes fixed on Daryl's weapon. "That's a Glock 19, 9mm, 15-round magazine, plus one in the chamber if you've loaded it properly, which I doubt. Your safety's off, and based on how you're holding it, you've never had proper firearms training." Daryl's eyes widened behind his mask. "Your finger placement tells me you're nervous, which means you might accidentally discharge that weapon and hurt someone you don't intend to, maybe even one of your friends." Jack's voice had changed, no longer that of a cautious elderly man. There was steel in it now, the unmistakable authority of command. The bank fell completely silent. Even Daryl seemed momentarily frozen by the transformation. Jack's posture had subtly shifted. He stood straighter, shoulders squared, the slight stoop of age vanishing as though it had never existed. His stance widened slightly, center of gravity lowered. The foundation of combat readiness that decades of military training had ingrained in his muscle memory. 27 years as military police, including hostage negotiation specialist in Beirut and Panama, Jack continued, his voice clear and measured. "And I can tell you 3 things with absolute certainty. First, police response is approximately 90 seconds out. Second, you're all first-timers, scared, disorganized, and making critical mistakes. Third, there are ways this ends where nobody gets hurt, including you." Daryl's hand trembled slightly, the weapon no longer quite as steady. Jack noticed and pressed his psychological advantage. "You're not a killer, son. Your eyes say it. Your breathing says it. You came for money, not blood. But that path is closing fast, unless you make a different choice right now." The other robbers exchanged uncertain glances. The leader at the door checked his watch nervously. Around the bank, hostages watched in disbelief as a frail old man they'd barely noticed transform before their eyes into someone else entirely. Someone accustomed to control, to crisis, to command. "This isn't going how you planned," Jack continued calmly. "Your window for a nonviolent exit is closing. 30 seconds, maybe less. Make the smart choice." Daryl's mask couldn't hide his confusion and growing fear. The power dynamic had shifted completely. The weapon in his hand suddenly feeling ineffective against this elderly man who somehow seemed to have seized control of the entire situation without moving a muscle. "Cops!" hissed the robber at the door, peering through blinds. "They're setting up outside." Panic flickered across Daryl's eyes. His gun hand trembled more visibly now. "Decision time," Jack said quietly. "Put it down and walk away from this. Prison time for armed robbery is better than the alternative." For a moment, no one moved. Then Jack took a slow, deliberate step forward rather than back. The first hostage negotiation rule: establish trust. "I haven't lied to you yet." Second rule: provide an acceptable way out. The lead robber by the door called out, "Daryl, we need to go. Now." Jack kept his eyes locked on Daryl's. "You have 10 seconds to make a choice that determines the rest of your life." Incredibly, Daryl's gun hand lowered slightly. Jack nodded encouragingly. "That's it. Just place it on the ground." "What about the cops?" Daryl's voice cracked. suddenly sounding much younger. "I'll tell them you cooperated. That matters in court." Jack's voice remained steady, reassuring but firm. As sirens wailed outside, Daryl slowly lowered his weapon to the floor. Jack immediately kicked it away, then gestured to the customers nearest the rear offices. Everyone moved calmly toward the back. "Ma'am," he addressed a pregnant woman, "go first, please." The hostages began moving while Jack kept his attention on all three robbers. The leader by the door cursed and raised his weapon again, but Jack's commanding voice stopped him. "Your friend made the right choice. The building is surrounded. There's no escape scenario where weapons improve your situation." Something in Jack's absolute certainty made the other robbers hesitate just long enough. Blue lights flashed through the windows as police cruisers surrounded the building. After a tense moment, both remaining robbers placed their weapons on the floor. Jack directed them to kneel with hands behind their heads, maintaining control until tactical officers entered minutes later. The police, weapons drawn, secured the robbers while staring in confusion at the elderly man who had somehow defused the situation. They surrendered their weapons voluntarily. Jack informed the lead officer, "No one is injured." As officers led the robbers away, customers surrounded Jack, voices overlapping with gratitude and amazement. The young teller hugged him, tears streaming down her face. "How did you know what to do?" she asked. Jack smiled gently. "When you've been in enough bad situations, you learn to recognize patterns." A police captain approached, extending his hand. "That was extraordinary work, sir. You likely saved lives today." Jack shook his hand firmly. "I just did what anyone with my training would do. These young men made poor choices, but they chose not to escalate in the end. That counts for something." When reporters later asked why he intervened, Jack's answer was simple. "In the military, we live by a code. Protecting innocent lives isn't heroism. It's responsibility. That duty doesn't end with retirement." 3 weeks later, First Chicago National Bank unveiled a wall of honor dedicated to local veterans. Jack's photo, not from today, but from 1975, standing tall in his military police uniform, held the central position. Beneath it, a simple plaque read, "Service never retires." The bank robbery had transformed the community's perception of its veteran population. What began as one man's action sparked something larger. Local businesses displayed veterans welcome signs. The community college started a program where veterans shared expertise with criminal justice students. 3 elderly Vietnam veterans, previously isolated, now mentored troubled teens at the community center. Jack, uncomfortable with attention, initially resisted interviews. But when asked to speak at the local high school, he agreed, not to discuss the robbery, but to talk about service. "Military training prepares you for moments of crisis," he told the students. "But its real value is in how it shapes your everyday choices. Vigilance, responsibility, putting others before yourself. These aren't battlefield values, they're life values." The young police officer who had responded to the bank robbery became Jack's unlikely friend, often visiting to discuss tactics and crowd psychology. "Books can't teach what experience can," the officer told his colleagues. And this old man had forgotten more about crisis management than most of us will ever learn. When a local reporter asked Jack if he felt his actions had changed perceptions about senior veterans, he chuckled. "If it makes people think twice before dismissing someone based on gray hair or a cane, that's progress. Age changes your capabilities, but not your core." On Veterans Day, the town organized its first military appreciation parade in decades. Jack reluctantly agreed to serve as Grand Marshal, walking the route with his back straight and head high, acknowledging the cheers with humble nods. Many senior veterans joined him, some in wheelchairs, others walking proudly in partial uniforms, all being seen, truly seen, by their community for perhaps the first time in years. The most meaningful moment for Jack came when Daryl's mother approached him after her son's sentencing. "He got 5 years, she said tearfully. "But the judge noted how he surrendered his weapon. That was because of you. Thank you for giving my son a second chance." Jack simply nodded. We all deserve second chances. Every Tuesday morning, Jack still visits the bank to deposit his retirement check. But now, people notice him, not as a hero, but as a reminder that courage, wisdom, and service come in all ages. If you've been moved by Jack's story, share it with someone who might need reminding that our veterans carry their training, values, and courage long after hanging up their uniforms. Have you ever misjudged someone based on their age? Let us know in the comments.